Can everyone hear me? I think I've unmuted. Brilliant. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Terry, for that introduction. But I just wanted to correct you. I'm not the founding member. I can't take the credit for that. But yes, I am on the caretaking team of the Family Sangha. So I think I'll start with how did I come to Buddhism? So I think I really started my own spiritual path when my daughter Uma was around 2 years old. I felt a lot of dissatisfaction about life. I didn't really understand what was happening to me. If asked, I definitely wouldn't have thought I was unhappy. But now, when I reflect back, I believe I was too numb to know what was happening to me. And I got caught in the trap of comparing myself with other people, which got enhanced by parenthood. I tried to control everything, including having a well behaved daughter. I felt a sense of alienation, not belonging, desperately seeking something, but not even realizing that that was what I was doing. I now understand that it was really a disconnection from myself. This sense of disconnection also showed up in my marriage. But again, of course, I thought it was my husband who was the problem and not what was going on inside me. The first retreat that I went to, which was really the turning point for me, was in 2017 in Stourbridge. And I took my daughter, Uma, who was, I think, 7 at the time. She's now 14, and my mom. And I remember looking around at the families where the husbands, partners, fathers were present and really felt jealous that they all had families and partners who practiced together and got it, and my husband didn't. I, of course, made several attempts at getting him into it. I took him to a walking meditation with the monastics in Victoria Park once, thinking surely that will do it. How can anyone not be moved by the presence of the monastics? Their presence touched my heart, so I thought surely it would do the same thing for him. I was like a new convert to the way, and even invited my brother and his family to this mindfulness walk in the past. And it was an absolute disaster. My husband got bored, and my brother got extremely restless and irritated with the stillness. So after this, I believed I was not being convincing enough. Therefore, I thought I would try harder and use rational, logical explanations to convince them. And this is my pattern of behaving. This is how I normally have been, just trying to explain things logically. And that was just repeating itself. And needless to say, none of it was working. In fact, I think I was just annoying everyone. So, in my upbringing, the body was seen as a source of suffering. The material world was seen as Maya, an illusion, something to transcend in order to attain moksha, liberation from reincarnation. But from Thay's explanation of Buddha's teachings, I learned that peace, liberation, freedom is in the here and now. There is no need to escape anywhere else. So started slowly learning to connect to my body and the breath, to dwell in the present moment. I felt my heart opening up. I started experiencing joy in my body for the first time. It was revolutionary for me. So of course I wanted to share it with my family. And this is where the lows also started coming in. As I practiced, I started feeling anger towards my mum. One of the biggest insights that came up for me in meditation was the shame I carried about my body as a woman. I noticed all of this was connected not just to my own mum, but it was an oppression of the feminine energy through many generations of my ancestors. The oppression wasn't just outwardly, which was, of course, something I was always aware about through many of the social customs that exist in India. But I experienced the oppression and shame in a very visceral and embodied sense. And I feel this shame as part of intergenerational feminine trauma. And I use the word shame on purpose because it is a very embodied experience of wanting to hide something away. My body was closed up. it also showed up as anger. For a long time, I attempted to connect to my breath, thinking the anger will go away. It didn't. In fact, it just got stronger. But now I recognize that that was what I was doing. What I was doing was ignoring my anger. And the more I pushed it away, the louder it got, as it wanted to be heard. It had something to say to me. It's my wounded inner child, inner little girl. And I also feel it's the silenced feminine energy. But I also feel that the anger doesn't just belong to me, it is the anger of my female ancestors. It's the anger that they were not allowed to feel because women are raised to be understanding, caring, tolerant, soft. Being angry has always been shamed, just like the female body has been shamed. So I am gradually bringing compassion to that anger and really using Thay's teachings of holding the anger like a crying baby, like a mother holds her baby. And I find there is something very profound there. It is the anger of the oppressed feminine, which is being soothed and cradled by another aspect of the feminine energy, the mother. It's the energy that doesn't tell the baby she's naughty. She holds the baby with love in whatever state she is in. The mother accepts the baby as she is. It is the love that has the power to transform. I also practice touching Mother Earth so that I can ask her to hold the anger for me with her stability and solidity. I've learned gradually, not completely, but gradually, to let go of the need to control, letting go of my anger, and of the need to get my husband into the practice. Through the practice, I recognize that the right causes and conditions aren't present for him to want to practice. And also, maybe that is not his way. Being humble, recognizing that I don't know everything. The first mindfulness training comes to mind, reverence for life, cultivating openness and non-attachment to views in order to transform fanaticism and dogmatism in myself and in the world. Another practice that I do is dancing, classical Indian dancing, which is very meditative, and that makes me feel very connected to my body, brings me home to my body. And I'm constantly developing new insights into myself. It is something I find so beautiful as I deepen into the mystery of myself, and through that, also the mystery of others. That curiosity into the mystery generates love in me.
Thank you, Avni, for some really deep insights. And our next speaker is Anais, and Anais just shared with us just before this meeting that she was living near Plum Village when she was a child, and so had the seeds of the practice sown in her from a very early age, even though she didn't know it. So welcome, Anais, and yes, I'm very happy to be able to enjoy your insights from your teaching work. I believe you teach mindfulness, and you have children. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Oh, I didn't realize being highlighted meant that I was going to see my own face so big.
You don't have to. You can be in gallery.
Yeah, I think I will do that. I'd rather see you all. Yes, thank you for the introduction. So I'm Anaïs Holt, and I'm going to start with the obvious, which is I am French. And since this year, I'm also British. I've been living here in the UK for 17 years. I came to do a PhD in physical chemistry, nothing to do with what we're talking about, and found my husband and migrated him from the north of England to the south to be closer to France. I am going to get inspired by Avni's speech and start with, how did I come to Buddhism or meditation? And very briefly, I was sharing with the other panelists this morning that I discovered meditation, mindfulness meditation, on my grandma's carpet when I was about 7 years old, which is about the age of my children. And she introduced me to mindfulness meditation. I followed some of the steps with her, and then just found it a little bit too awkward and strange, put it in the corner of my mind, and then came back to it a long time later when I was about in my 30s. And I'd been anxious all of my childhood, all of my young adulthood, but just thought it was a normal way of being. When I became pregnant, however, the anxiety just went up over the roof, and I just didn't know how to calm it. And I rediscovered mindfulness meditation and started doing some body scan practices, and it calmed me a lot. And then I increased my practice, and then little by little open to Buddhism again. So really, I would say that it's about 10 years ago that I came back to mindfulness meditation and Buddhism and started practicing more and more, and found that it was helping me inside and it was helping me in my relationship to others. At that time, it was with my husband, visiting my family. There is a very famous quote from Ram Dass, if you think you're enlightened, go and spend a week with your parents. Well, I really found that to be true. And then, having my own children. And so I decided a few years ago to take my practice even further and become a mindfulness meditation teacher. So I started doing some trainings and realizing that actually not just meditating for myself, but starting sharing some of that journey with my colleagues, with my family, it was a lot easier to embody the practices. And then I rediscovered Thich Nhat Hanh. I had some of his books from a long time ago, and I read them in French. And then I heard his teaching in English, and I started reading about his teaching in English, and started sowing the seeds in me that I would really like my family to practice with me. I have a very scientific-minded husband, and let's say that spirituality isn't at all on his radar. I was raised actually Catholic, and I also put that to the side about when I was 14. So really going back into something that looked like religion or spirituality was something that was a really big step for me. And really thinking that I was going to take on my family on that journey was even a bigger step. Yet this year, I made the step of one, leaving my corporate career to one side and jumping into being a full-time mindfulness meditation teacher and a coach. And the second thing was even bigger than that, was taking my children and my husband for the family retreat at Plum Village. I had a lot of expectation. If some of you know about the Plum Village family retreat, it is a week packed with so many things to experience, not just for the children who have their own children program, which is full of introducing them to the practice, all of the different practice of pebble meditation, inviting the bell, mindful snacking, but also doing a lot of singing and crafting. Amazing. But also during that time where the children are being taken care by the volunteer, the parents go and listen to the Dharma, amazing Dharma from the monks and nuns. We visit the different villages. There is 3 locations in Plum Village in France. They are as beautiful one as the other. You eat mindfully, you're fed some very nourishing food. I had all of that in my mind. Let me tell you, this is not what happened in reality. My children kind of warmed up to the idea of going to that. However, when we arrived, summer in France, if you haven't experienced it, varies from a very, comfortable 25-degree to an extreme of 42-degree. Let's say this summer was the extreme of 42-degree. Really, really hot. And we decided to camp. My children have a skin that reacts really bad to mosquito bite. It is full of mosquito, tiger mosquito. They got bitten within the first 24 hours, 2 bits. And they were itchy, they were restless, they were very hot, and they did not want to be there. And they really let us know. Every single day we had, and I'm practicing my, loving speech, so not embellishing, we had at least 3 tantrums per child. So I have 2. They didn't want to be left in the children practice that they had. So there was something like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening of children activities. They didn't want to. They were just screaming and kicking to not have to go, or my 8-year-old was just sulking and trying to hide to not have to go. After 3 days of that, we went to another of the Plum Village for a visit. And the thing that was needed for me to wake up to this expectation that I was still holding really dearly to was that during that visit of the second Plum Village, my 8-year-old fell from a swing and fell on the ground, hit his head, and actually he had a concussion. So he lost his memory. He didn't know how he'd arrived there. He didn't know what was happening. He was in a blur. So I had to drive him to hospital. Within a few hours, he remembered what happened. And so they sent us back to Plum Village with, the instruction of, keep an eye on him, make sure that he doesn't get sick or anything. Fine. Following morning, he was vomiting repeatedly. So we went back to another hospital with a pediatric ward. And this is at that time that I was just like, what am I doing? I have all of this really strong expectation, but really I wanted them to enjoy the practice with me. What is my heart really wanting? My heart really wanted my children and my husband to enjoy some of those things that I had discovered in Tay's teaching, some of the calm and peace. They definitely weren't experiencing the calm and peace. He was terror inside them. It was just anger and sadness that mommy was forcing them to do something that they didn't want to. So after this second trip to the hospital, and just to tell you, no consequence, he just hadn't eaten enough. And so that kind of went into him vomiting. His blood sugar back up. We had a night in a hotel to kind of rest everybody out, and then decided to go back for the last 2 days of the retreat. And then I just surrendered. I surrendered and I said, I'm going to get one thing out of the last 2 days, which is sharing a connected experience with my children. So I went to see the nun that was leading the children program, and I just said to them, I don't think they want to be there, but they will if I'm there with them. So I joined the children program for the last 2 days. I was there with my children when they wanted to be in the child program, and when they wanted to be out of it and just playing outside, I was there with them to play outside. I was still enjoying the beautiful surrounding, the calm atmosphere, the compassionate atmosphere. And my husband went to listen to all of the Dharma talk. So if nothing else, at least he was taking some of that in. And it was a lot easier. The last 2 days were a lot easier like that. So going back to my top tip as a parent, and I think those are my reflection from this attempt to take my children to a family routine, which is don't force it. There is a time and a place for everything. And this wasn't the time for them to enjoy it from their own agreement. So don't force it. And sometimes it really requires some surrendering. My second advice is we learn a lot about loving speech from Thich Nhat Hanh. And if you know a bit about it, there is 4 aspects to loving speech, which is tell the truth, tell it kindly. Don't tell the truth just to tell the truth. Tell it when you're watering good seeds in other people. The second is don't embellish. You can see as I was practicing telling you that story, trying really hard to not embellish because it is really tempting. Even if embellishing sometimes sounds like really making something sound a lot worse. The third aspect, I needed to come back to me now, is yes, don't divide. So don't try and turn people against each other, or don't turn against some idea. And then the fourth aspect is don't speak cruelly. So don't be mean. So loving speech is actually really, really challenging to practice. You have to be so mindful of what you're going to say. That I found that sometimes it's easier when you feel like you have a lot of emotion to stay quiet. And Tay kind of invites us to do that. You know, when you feel like you have this seed of anger sprouting in you, or this seed of despair sprouting in you, and you kind of see the flower coming out, just don't say anything. Just stay quiet and attend to yourself, which is my third top tip practicing as a family is, you know, this picture of put your oxygen mask first on before you think about others. So when you're not able, for example, to practice loving speech, it's because you need something. So put your oxygen on mask first, take care of yourself. And that applies to applying any of the practice that Tay teaches. If you find it a challenge, it's because you need some care. So I'm going to go back to what Avni was sharing with us. You know, if it is anger that is like pushing you to speak in maybe a not loving manner, cradle your anger and take care of it before you're able to speak. So I'm really sorry I didn't put a timer. I hope I didn't go too fast and too much. But thank you so much. I'm very grateful for all of you practicing.
So our next speaker is Melissa James, who's a singer and actor, I think, as well, and has supported many of our events with her lovely voice and personality, and who also has 2 children. Is it just 2? I think just 2, maybe more. I'm not sure. Okay. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Oh, greetings, everyone. Thank you, Terry, for inviting me to be here. And having listened to both Anais and Avni, I wonder what really I have to share this morning about my family practice. So just to give a little bit of background into my path into my path towards Plum Village, and also a bit of my spiritual path. So for me, my sort of spiritual journey began about, well, over 10 years ago. through my creativity, through my work as an artist. Really, I wasn't expecting.
Melissa, can I interrupt you just a minute? I
Can
think
you not hear me?
you will need, yeah, your voice is very quiet. Maybe if you come a bit nearer to your computer. But I know you know how to project, so maybe you just need to project a bit more.
Can
Thank
you
you.
hear me better now?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, yeah.
Not very much, so that's really odd because I've got the microphone plugged in now and it's much closer to me. No, it's still not. Do I have to hold it right here? That's really odd. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really
Very
bizarre.
yeah, but it might be in the same for others.
Right, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll do my best. I'll keep talking loud. Um, yes, so my path into spirituality, my spiritual path sort of began over 10 years ago through my art. Um, I am a singer, songwriter, artist, and I'd recorded my first record, and I just that whole time of creativity. Soon after that, because it was such an important thing for me to do as part of leading my truth, which I wouldn't have used those terms at the time. I certainly didn't recognize it at the time, but I see now that that's what it was, that it was like a door opening to discovering more of that truth and more of who I was. And so that began my path into spiritual practices and meditation, even though I had no idea what really I was doing. It was just something that I led myself to do on my own. Um, but in sort of early 2020, before lockdown, um, I saw a role advertised. I don't know really how I saw this, but I somehow came across the Plum Village website and saw a role, happened to see a role advertised for, I can't even remember what, some sort of admin assistant or something working with Plum Village, and decided, even though I knew not very much at all about Plum Village at that stage, I had been aware of Thai very loosely, but I can't say that I knew very much really. Um, I applied for the role and I didn't get it, but what I think partly drew me in was the response that I got, as by way of letting me know that I hadn't been successful. It was one of the most beautifully detailed rejection letters I've ever received, and I've never received one since. Um, and and that was like a, well, goodness, what a letter, you know. And then also it having um, applied for the role and of course talked about who I am and what I do, there was the invitation from the person writing to me to, well, maybe there are other things that we can be explored here. Maybe, you know, we always have music, and it would be wonderful if you felt you wanted to partake in some of our work through your work as an artist and through what you do as a singer. So that guided me towards Plum Village, and then discovering Colours of Compassion, which is the Sangha that I'm connected to. I think really, I mean, there was so much going on at the time of 2020, and the intersection of mindfulness and meditation and injustice was where my practice really came in more, and where I felt even more drawn, because especially being locked down, that was where I called upon the guidance of teachers who could help me to navigate that time as an activist, but also as somebody who was experiencing a lot of, as many of us likely were, a lot of pain of that time after George Floyd's murder. Um, there were a lot of questions as to how I could tend to that anger and that pain, what it represented for me, and how I could understand what it represented and make use of it in a way that was healing and positive. In terms of my family, this was where I found what Avni and Anais had to say really interesting, because I've certainly experienced that sense of wanting, that longing to bring my family into what I do. I wish that they could see the benefits to my sitting and meditating each day, and to my mindful practices, and the strange things that I think they would say that they are strange. Me walking outside, one of my favorite practices is to walk with my feet on the earth, kissing the earth with my feet. Just walking generally, to be with nature, singing as I do so. That for me is a very spiritual practice. And I'd love for them to be able to connect with some of these things that they see me do, and to be drawn to want to do them as well. But I know that they have no interest. And so I have, rather than feeling like I want to try to pull them in, I managed a little bit at various points when my son was much younger. My children are now 20, my son's 20 and at university, my daughter's 17 and just beginning her A-levels. And when they were younger, certainly for my son, there was a slight window, maybe, of calling him in through yoga, inviting him to do a little bit of practice with me. And then as part of that, I wouldn't call it meditation, but I'd say we were just sitting and just breathing. We're just watching our breath. And I might have got him to sit for 2 or 3 minutes then. And for a time that was there. I also practice Yoga Nidra, which is a form of yogic sleep, if you like, deep healing sleep and meditation. And there was a time when I could encourage him to do that as well before getting up and out of bed. It was a thing for him to be able to do to help him to be calm before he got up and began his day, again for sort of 10 minutes or so. So there has been a window, now that I think about it. But in terms of, trying to encourage them both to do that more as a regular practice, and to not see it as a strange thing that I do, I've not at all been, successful, to use that term, in doing that. And I let go of it, because I could see that they just, they already see me as so different. Their mother was not like the mothers that they saw at school, who were, much more, I don't know, ordinary, and, had a proper job, and, didn't wear colourful clothing, and, just did the regular mother things, whatever they might be. But their mother was this singer, this artist, and she went and she did gigs, and, and she was quite loud, and, she sings as she's walking in nature, and she practices yoga every day, and she wears these colourful, bright, exuberant clothes. So in a way, they needed to pull themselves further away from the practices that I did. They weren't going to be drawn towards doing mindfulness, yoga and meditation. They needed to have some way of distancing themselves from this kind of quite crazy mad woman. And we live in a quite very white area as well of London, southwest London, and so that's the difference too. I'm black. I'm I'm exuberant. I practice yoga. I sing loud, So therefore, you know, how can they retain some sense of normality, something that makes them feel more aligned with what the rest of the world seems to be doing, or the rest of society seems to be doing? Um, and so I continue doing what I do, not by way of trying to draw them into it, but by way of just doing what I do. I speak to them a lot. I have done over the years about the challenges that life throws at you, which you just can't fully appreciate when you're, you know, a teenager, when you're a child, um, and how it is my practices that that get me through those challenges. I mean, they don't cure everything. They don't stop me from having the challenges at all. And sometimes I question myself, like I do all this yoga and I do all this meditation. Why am I still finding this so hard? But then I'm reminded that it is when the earth is most rocky, when things are most challenging, when everything feels like it's not aligning and it's most difficult, that actually that's when my practice comes into its own, even if I'm not able to do it in quite the way that I might like to. You know, because I love being able to give myself an hour and a half of doing my practice every day, and have had long periods, years of being able to do that, um, but less so these days. It's still part of me and I still do it, but I sometimes feel like I have to snatch the time a bit more. But that practice that I've built up over the years in advance is what gets me through now. And if they can see that in me at some stage, they may not become meditators, no, but at some stage when they're going through their own rockiness, perhaps that in some way will be what they reflect on, and it will be not necessarily what they call on themselves, but maybe something to remind them that there can be a way for them to get through whatever it is they're going through. It might not be what I do, but it might be their calling to find whatever it might be for them, whatever helps them. So I yeah, and just to say as well, one of the things that came to me as I was listening to both Anais and to Avni was that sense of loneliness that I have experienced in um, being part of a household where I don't feel like I can share what I'm doing with them, because I'm doing it kind of on my own, and so that has at times made me feel quite separate from them. But I also feel that um, that that's kind of true in many ways for a lot of what I do. That I am called somehow to live the example of the things that I feel are important to me, as a way of perhaps demonstrating, illustrating, inspiring somebody else who, even if I am not aware of it, might therefore feel that they can have some strength to live the things or the way that they want to be, even if it seems different from what everybody else is doing. I didn't say that very well, so I hope that makes sense. Um, but finally, to also just say, my music, my art, both in terms of how I do it as a profession, but also how it, um, you know, it's not separate from me. It's not this separate sort of job, if you like. It is very much, it has been at the center, as I said at the start, of leading me towards doing the spiritual graft, the spiritual work that I do, which feeds into every corner of my life. So my practice of of using my voice, of sounding, of singing when outdoors, of performing on stage, of knowing how to perform on stage, of transmitting through me what I feel it is I need to bring to a performance. My music feeds into all of my practice, and my practice then it becomes like a dialogue both ways. They feed each other, and so that is integral to how I then know I need to show up each day, and I'm constantly checking in with myself on how that is. What do I need to bring to a situation? What do I need to bring to a relationship? What do I need to bring to myself? What are my own needs? What do I require at this time? How am I feeling? How, you know, they are intertwined. My practice as a singer, as an artist, and my practice when I'm sitting on my cushion, and my practice when I'm walking and meditating. They are part of the whole of me. There's no separation between any of them. So yeah, I am continually grateful for the fact that I can use this, and I said finally before, but finally to end on this, there was something that came to me quite recently, when I was reflecting, partly on what I was going to be saying here, and thinking about my practice and family, and rather feeling like I could talk about how I have tried to engage my family in my practice. What I realized was that, because actually my practice reminds me that it's more about me, and not so much about what I try to do in getting other people to change. It's more about how I change, how I can be bettered, how I can show up in the world. And what I realized was, in a kind of dispute with somebody else that I was having quite a heated discussion with, and he said to me, "Why, calm down. Why are you getting so angry?" And I realized in that moment that my family, and the people that I live with at home, are the people with whom I am in a most primed position to be able to practice with, in the sense of using, rather than in a way treating my family as the people who should be able to see the lesser side of me and put up with that, with the less, what's the word, with the sort of, not when we go out into the world, we I guess we're more prepared to put on, to try our best, to be our best and put our best selves forward. But at home we might not feel the need to do that so much. We can be as relaxed with our families we might want to be, and that's a nice thing in one sense. But I also, in this moment, speaking to this man, realized that if I'm to practice finding ways of being able to engage with others in those heated moments when I've become impassioned about something that's really important to me, the way to practice that is with the people at home. So rather than feeling that it's okay to be angry around them, but then to go outside and to try to control that side, that actually, learning how to speak around my family when I am impassioned is the best way of then knowing how to take that practice outside and engage with it when I'm unexpectedly in a moment of when I'm unexpectedly on unstable ground, and finding it difficult to control how I might want to present myself or present the things that I want to say. Sorry, I feel like I'm waffling now and not being as articulate as I can be. But that's essentially where I feel that my family helps me most, and perhaps where I can set an example of how to be, as in learning how to be with those people that I love most, essentially, and then taking that out into the rest of the world. Thank you for listening. And thank you again, Terry, for inviting me to be here.